Hauntings, folks. Today we're going to be taking a look around the village of Binsted in West Sussex. It's not that far from Arundel and it's a place rich in history and folklore. We're just starting here at the Black Horse Public House where during World War II it was actually used to house refugees from Ford, because Ford had a lot of MOD land, so it got bombed to hell. Yeah, aside from that, there's not much about the pub that I could find, apart from the fact that every now and then there's like a phantom smell of smoke in there, which is, you know, interesting. Personally, the only spirits I saw in there were the gin. Now, we're going to take a look around this village and all the different places. We're going to find everything from cults, witches, drownings, even water dragons. So, yeah. Come with me and we'll take a look around. Binsted in West Sussex is a small non-nucleated village that lies 2.5 miles west of Arundel. A prehistoric earthwork runs north to south through Binsted and north on the A27 as far as Madehurst on the Downs. It is probably related to the Chichester entrenchments, an enigmatic system of Iron Age fortifications centred on Chichester. There are a few such systems in the country. These systems, now known as territorial oppedia, may have been for defence or to mark possession of a territory. Just a stone's throw from the Black Horse pub is the entrance to Binsted Woods, a place which is linked to a lot of folklore. There's a beast and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that more as we go around. We're heading over to an Anglo-Saxon mound at the moment, which was a moot mound. We'll talk about that when we get there, but before we go any further, I'd just like to point out these signs here. So yeah, in the woods you have archery going on, and I happen to have an anecdote that I found on one of the message boards about Binsted when I was doing some research, and it's actually from an archer. This man says, "I do archery in the Binsted Woods a couple of times a week in the day, seems fine, but I swear, every time I go shooting I will miss the target, and every time my arrow goes missing. I look for it for a good 30 minutes and it's nowhere to be seen." He's seen a couple of deers while he's been here a couple of weeks ago, and he did see something shoot across the ground, but he didn't know what it was. Maybe a fox, or maybe a beast. Binsted is a place with lots of like old earthworks and things like that. We've got the wall bank that basically runs alongside the actual village itself. There's a Roman road. I mean, this place goes back to, you know, Roman occupation and beyond. Now, this here is an Anglo-Saxon mound known as the Moot Mound. It's an Anglo-Saxon meeting place that sits at the head of the Rife Valley, and alongside it runs the Iron Age earthwork known as the War Dyke, atop which the church sits. We're going and looking at the church in a little bit. Yeah, the Moot Mound is believed to be the meeting place of the Binsted 100, which were basically like, similar to a town council, that kind of thing. They would meet there and thrash out all, like, you know, basically bicker. Do all that bureaucratic loveliness. Now, around here, a lot of places are called 100 House Copse. There's 100 House Field. So yeah, it's all named after the Binsted 100, basically. It was also believed to be the meeting place of the Aves Court, connected with Arundel Forest, which organised the pasturing of animals in the forest area. So yeah, this is a very important site. A lot of stuff got done here. It's basically like the equivalent of our town halls, I guess. Something along that kind of lines. Right now, what I'm walking on is a lane called Scotland Lane, and it's actually a medieval road that was used for commerce over to Arundel. Now, over from it, Binsted is a place with lots of like famous oak trees and things like that, known as grandfather oaks. Now, there's just one over to my left now, called the Scotland Oak. Cool. Right, still walking along Scotland Lane. Halfway along is another one of the oaks. This one is Copythorn Oak. I like how they're just sort of in the middle of nowhere, kind of like sentinels, you know? You get a feeling if any tree was actually like an evil god or something, it'd be that bugger right there. Yeah, cool. Just imagine like loads of ravens perching in the branches. Great, absolutely. Now I'm in Binsted Wood proper. Now, it's almost eerily quiet. It's a lovely place, beautiful, some really ancient trees and all the rest of it. And I've come here to share a few anecdotes with you. I spent a lot of time looking on the boards and on message boards and things like that about Binsted and all of its hauntings and stuff, because Binsted Woods is supposed to be a place of all kinds of spooks and spectres and weird stuff. Witches, cults, you name it. Now here's a few that I found. A man said, "I grew up in Arundel and live here still. I've always heard about the woods being haunted, but never really believed it until I did have an unusual encounter with my friend while on a bike ride. We went quite deep and found what appeared to be a camp made from animal fur and tarpaulin. When we went for a closer look, there were several old people gathered around. This was enough to freak us out. It was only recently looking into the woods that I read about cult followings and wondered if what we found was something along those lines." So that's interesting, isn't it? Another man, completely separately, says, "I think I saw a witch there when I was a kid back in the late 60s. On the other hand, somebody else, I think I've just filmed it. On the other hand, I live in the house in the middle of this wood and find it nothing but peaceful and beautiful," a lady says. "Never seen or heard anything spooky. Walk my dog twice a day and never felt anything. I'm the person that lights the candles at the MacDonald Pond, if that's freaking anyone out. Don't be afraid of this wood. It's a lovely place." Isn't that what the witch said to Hansel and Gretel? She ends this by saying, "Just mind the headless horseman." You know? Now, Binsted Wood is also believed to be, was believed to be home of the Beast of Binsted. Now, Sussex has got quite a lot of beasts, and a lot of them are feline. Now, this one was an enormous wild tabby cat-like creature, thought by some to be the survivor of a wildcat population that had held on amidst the tangle of Binsted's ancient countryside. It interbred with domestic and feral domestic cats around the village. Many a Binsted household up until the 1990s had, by adoption, an intermediate but still by domestic standards huge tabby sired by the wild beast of Binsted. Now, this is something that's pretty near and dear to me because I had a wild tabby sired by a wildcat. I had an enormous tabby sired by a wildcat, and we found him in a rescue shelter. He was originally believed to be a female, so we named her Tabitha. When, you know, certain bits appeared that pointed to a different gender, we renamed her to Tabby. Now, he was a Scottish Wildcat cross. He was found on the M6 in a box along with the rest of his litter. So we'd obviously got a local cat up the duff. She'd had kittens, they'd just dumped the kittens in a box. So yeah,
The well-meaning households of Binsted had neutered these cats, but it is believed that in a corner of the village, the strain of the beast of Binsted still survives. On the outskirts of Binsted Woods lies the MacDonald Pond. It's so named for a statue which we're going to take a look at in a moment. Now, this pond is believed to be bottomless and also to the home of water nixies. It's also the site of several hauntings. 2 children, way back when, are believed to have drowned in here and are believed to haunt the banks at the back. Some nights you'll see 2 children in Victorian dress sort of lurking around. Now, the other haunting is a lot more spectacular. Some nights it is believed that you can hear a horse-drawn cart coming along this old road and crashing into the pond. Yeah, believed that it crashed and went into the pond. Now, people, you know, obviously when you say something's bottomless, there's always some smart aleck who wants to try and prove you wrong, right? Now, somebody tried this, they got so far, and the machine couldn't go any further and packed up. So that's very, very cool. Now, let's go over here. This is the Madonna statue. The person who erected this did so to honour her dead mother. And the original statue of the Madonna was actually blessed in Rome by His Holiness the Pope. Now, at some point in the 80s, the 1980, I believe, it was recorded in the Chichester Observer in 1980. The statue was smashed, and in its place was a cross festooned with feathers in an almost pagan sort of aspect. You know, it was a witchcraft. The people said it was black magic, voodoo, that kind of business, right? So since then, it's been, that's a plaster replica. So since then, it's been behind bars pretty much, and there was actually barbed wire around it at one point. Now, and it's also said that death will come to any man who touches the Madonna. And it is believed that she is watching over the 2 children, which I mentioned earlier, who were believed to have been drowned as part of witchcraft rituals, sacrifice, that kind of business. Now, I've got a lovely little anecdote here that I managed to find. Lovely little anecdote. Somebody says, "It's the only place I've been with a group of tattooed, hairy, oily bikers who felt spooked, where once was reduced to tears and shaking. They came here at night. Toward the end of the lane is a pond with a statue of a lady in the middle of which it said death would come to those who touch her. There was barbed wire wrapped around the bottom of the statue to stop people trying. There's definitely something uncomfortable about Binsted Wood." Yeah. So it's subject to a lot of mysterious legend around. Yeah, it's most of the locals and that just say it's just persistent rumour, it's not real, blah 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 blah. But a lot of people swear blind that when they pass it with their dogs, the dogs start crying and growling. Even those riding by on a horse have a job to get their horses to continue. Yeah, it's the Madonna Pond and the Madonna statue. Behind me is Binsted Manor. Now, it's not the original Binsted Manor. The original Binsted Manor stood until about 20 years ago when it was pulled down, but it had been abandoned since pretty much the end of the Second World War, the end of the 40s, beginning of the 50s. It had been pretty much stood abandoned, stood vacant. Now, it is believed that before it was pulled down, that the ruins were haunted by a man in a top hat. And I've got a lovely story about this here. It's by a man called Bill Peters, who has actually written a book on Binsted. I'll put links under the video. He remembers an incident from about 1943 or 1944 when he was a small child. Mother used to go up to the old house and try to keep the place clean. It was a time warp. You would walk through the door and you were back in the 1800s, and nothing had been touched. It was a labour of love, because the old place was falling down. That's the reason why it was abandoned. There was a huge circular box hedge at the centre of the old front garden. It wasn't very high, with a gravel path, so you could drive in the main gate in your horse and carriage and drive around the back and out again. One day, I think I was outside playing, and she suddenly rushed out, scooped me up, and ran all the way down the road. There was something in there she had to get away from. It was a funny old house, very still, very quiet, and you could be there on a summer's day and feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up. But I must admit, I never saw anything. When asked who he thought Binsted House was haunted by, Bill Peters replied, "All my ancestors." Now you're probably wondering what the bloody hell I'm doing. This is Spinning Wheel Copse, and this behind me is the Spinning Oak. Another one of the grandfather oaks. Now all around it has actually been dug out with chalk pits. It's all been dug out, and that was to make the ground fertile. Now, looking across this, I think it worked, you know. Those Anglo-Saxon fellows understood a thing or two. Now, the reason I was spinning around like a loon is because on moonlit nights, this place is supposed to be visited by a witch who spins around shrieking at midnight, anti-clockwise naturally, you know, widdershins and all that. So, yeah. Now, some people think that the screeching isn't a witch, that it's the feral cats or the beast. Why not all three? Maybe they're having a party. Okay. This handsome carving here is the waymark for the Nooker Hole, which we're going looking for in a little bit. We'll go and find the Nooker Hole. Now, it's believed to house two water dragons called Nookers, or Knackers, no laughing at the back, believed to be Saxon water sprites. And here they are, handsome chaps, aren't they? And we've got the Green Man here, who is believed to look over it and basically keep people safe from the old water spirits and all that kind of business. Yeah. Apparently there's also bees and a toad somewhere about there. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece of carving. Absolutely superb. Oh, the bees are on the back. Awesome, isn't it? Behind me is Binsted Church, St Mary's. It's a 12th century flint-built country church. It actually sits on top of an Iron Age earthwork, which can be visible from round the other back, but I doubt we're going to be able to get over there. Now, one of the reasons I brought you here, apart from just because it's interesting, is because this beautiful village is under threat. Where we are now, where we're standing, like just over there, they're planning on putting a bypass. Now, unfortunately, only half of Binsted is covered by the National Trust. That's the half with the MacDonald Pond and all that business over there. But this side, it isn't actually protected. But that includes the church, that includes the pub. All of this is under threat, which is a real shame. Now, when it was all sort of announced, locals and people like that decided to walk the route to see what kind of impact it would have on the local area. So they walked all the way from the start of where it's proposed, all the way up here to over towards Arundel that way. Now, just beyond there, just over there where I'm pointing, near where that road marker is, they're going to be putting a bridge over the road. It's going to be 8 foot tall. Now, as they were walking up here, the group, in front of them there was a figure walking along with them. and it got to just about here and completely vanished. It's now being known as the bypass banshee, which I think is really cool. So yeah, there's a nice modern haunting for you there. Now we're here on the road just before Meadow Lodge. Back in 2000, West Sussex Gazette asked for memories of Binsted. A man called Eric Phillips of Felpham recounted that while driving on the track that runs north-east towards Arundel Road near Goose Green and Meadow Lodge, that's where I'm standing right now, in about 1980, we were passing through when I observed a strange character smoking a clay pipe sitting on a low stone wall. The containing walls are now gone because of heavy traffic coming from Arundel and Wishart's farm. His clothes struck me as very strange and old, perhaps over 100 years. As I passed, I looked straight at him and pulled the car up only 20 feet to have another look, but lo and behold, when I got out in approximately 5 seconds, there was nobody there at all. And there was nowhere the person could have gone in such a short time. And it's been on my mind ever since. He returned to the spot recently and found the low wall had gone and the area looked overgrown after the passage of 20 years. He spoke to a young lady who was passing through and lived nearby. He recounted his experience and she seemed rather concerned and mentioned that he could have talked to an older man about it, but he had all just passed on. The man's wife, who was with him in the first instance as they went through, told him that she saw nothing on her side of the car. Well, he saw what he saw. Yeah. And there you go. This is also around here. Apparently, other people have seen a car come through and then it never comes out the other end. A vanishing car. Just like an M.R. James anthology, this little village, isn't it?
Unfortunately, night had fallen by the time we found the Nooker hole. Here's a couple of pictures of it in the daylight. We did enjoy wandering around the trees, though, in the dark and everything. That was very, very cool. The Nooker hole at Binsted, in Burgess's Field, south of Goose Green, is apparently a mythical hole like the one at Lyminster, which houses a dragon. It's said to be home of dragons and bottomless. Theories about the origin of these small, round, bottomless, perpetually cold water brimming ponds are varied. Some say they were made by the Nookers themselves, others that the Nookers adopted pre-existing natural formations, most probably created as sinkholes. Certainly there's something dangerous, not to say uncanny, about them. I hope you enjoyed our little tour of Binsted. Please hit like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.